Get your things and get out of my house. I won't have a nobody like you ruining my family." Mark sneered, throwing a final paycheck at his pregnant maid, Sarah, before slamming the door in her face. He thought he had solved his problem, getting rid of his secret affair and the baby he wanted no part of. What he didn't know was Sarah wasn't carrying one baby, she was carrying 4, and they would be back for the perfect Christmas surprise. But before we see how Sarah makes him pay, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into the full story. "I didn't hear you come in," Sarah Johnson said, clutching a duster to her chest. She stood in the doorway of the massive home office, her heart beating faster as she noticed her boss sitting alone in the dark. Mark Williams looked up from his desk, his blue eyes reflecting the glow of his computer screen. "Most people are gone by now. I was just finishing up the West Wing," Sarah explained, taking a small step backward. Mrs. Williams left a long list before her trip. Mark nodded and ran a hand through his silver hair. "Jessica always does. That's why she can spend 3 months in Europe without worrying about her perfect house falling apart." Sarah had worked in this Beverly Hills mansion for 3 years, but rarely spoke with Mr. Williams beyond basic greetings. He was always busy running Williams Enterprises, his luxury real estate company that built homes for people even richer than him. "Will you need anything else tonight, Mr. Williams?" Sarah asked, ready to leave. Mark checked his watch. "It's past 10 o'clock. Have you eaten dinner?" Sarah shook her head. "I was going to make something when I got back to my apartment. There's plenty of food in the kitchen. Jessica ordered enough to feed an army before she left." He stood up and stretched. "I haven't eaten either. Too many contracts to review." Sarah hesitated. In 3 years, she had never eaten with her employers. She cleaned their home, cooked occasionally, and kept to herself. That's how things worked. "I could bring you something," she offered. Mark smiled for the first time that evening. "Why don't we both eat? It's ridiculous to sit alone in different parts of the house." 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself sitting across from Mark Williams at the small table in the kitchen nook. Not the formal dining room where he entertained business associates, but the cozy space where staff sometimes ate. "Where are you from originally, Sarah?" Mark asked, taking a bite of the pasta she had warmed up. "Duluth, Minnesota," she answered. "It's nothing like California." "What brought you here?" Sarah looked down at her plate. "My parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. I needed a fresh start." Mark nodded, his expression softening. "I'm sorry to hear that." "What about you?" Sarah asked, surprising herself with her boldness. "Have you always lived in Beverly Hills?" Mark laughed. "Not even close. I grew up in New Jersey. My father sold insurance. We lived in a 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom. He took a sip of water. "I swore I'd live differently when I grew up." After dinner, Mark opened a bottle of wine. "Would you like some? It's a special vintage." Sarah knew she should say no. She should go to her small room in the staff quarters and keep the professional distance that had served her well. Instead, she nodded. 1 glass of wine turned into conversation that flowed more easily than Sarah expected. Mark talked about his company. Sarah shared stories from Minnesota. "What would you do if you weren't working here?" Mark asked suddenly. Sarah hesitated before answering. "I'd open a bakery. Nothing fancy, just a small place with my grandmother's recipes." "Why don't you?" "Opening a business takes money, Mr. Williams. I'm saving, but it will take time." "Call me Mark," he said, "at least when we're not around other people." The next evening, Sarah was cleaning near the home office when Mark returned from work. He looked tired, his expensive suit wrinkled after a long day. "Rough day?" Sarah asked. "The worst. A deal fell through because someone couldn't keep their mouth shut." He loosened his tie. "I could use some company again if you're not too busy." This became their routine while Jessica was away. Sarah would finish her work, then join Mark for dinner or a glass of wine. They talked about everything, their childhoods, dreams, disappointments. Sarah learned that despite his wealth, Mark often felt alone. "Jessica and I look perfect in the society pages," he told her one night. "But most days we're just two people living separate lives in the same house." One evening, rain pounded against the windows. Mark came in drenched, having run from his car to the door. "Let me get you some towels," Sarah said, hurrying to the linen closet. When she returned, Mark was standing closer than she expected. Water dripped from his hair onto his face. "Thank you," he said, taking the towel. His fingers brushed against hers. Sarah didn't move away. Instead, she reached up and gently dried a raindrop from his cheek. Mark leaned down and kissed her. Sarah knew she should stop him, but she didn't want to. The next day, Mark showed her his collection of vintage cars. "This one's my favorite," he said, running his hand along a sleek convertible. "Want to drive it?" "Around the block?" Sarah asked, eyes wide. "Just around the estate. The property's big enough." Sarah laughed as the wind blew through her hair. Mark watched her from the passenger seat, smiling in a way she'd never seen before. That night, they ended up in the guest house, far from the main residence, away from reality. "This isn't just," Mark started to say. "I know," Sarah whispered, though neither of them defined what this was. 3 weeks passed in what felt like a dream to Sarah. She knew it couldn't last, but she allowed herself to hope. Then Mark's phone rang while they were together. "Jessica," he said, looking at the screen. He answered, walking away from Sarah to speak to his wife. When he returned, his face had changed. "She's coming home early." "Next week." Sarah nodded, understanding what this meant. The next day, Mark called Sarah into his office. His professional mask was back in place. "What happened between us was a mistake," he said, not meeting her eyes. "Jessica will be home soon, and we need to maintain proper boundaries." "I understand," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the pain in her chest. "You're a valuable employee, Sarah. I hope we can move past this." Sarah nodded and left his office, closing the door softly behind her. She would continue cleaning their perfect home, making their perfect meals, and pretending nothing had happened. Jessica Williams returned from Europe with stories of Paris and Rome, bringing expensive gifts for Mark. She barely noticed Sarah, just handed her a list of tasks that needed attention after her absence. Life returned to normal, or what passed for normal in the Williams mansion. Sarah and Mark avoided being alone together. They spoke only when necessary, both pretending the past weeks had never happened. Then, one morning while cleaning the downstairs bathroom, Sarah felt suddenly ill. She barely made it to the toilet before throwing up. She blamed bad takeout food from the night before. But when it happened again the next day, and the day after that, Sarah couldn't ignore the possibility. On her day off, she bought a pregnancy test from a pharmacy far from Beverly Hills, where nobody would recognize her. In the tiny bathroom of her staff quarters, Sarah's hands shook as she waited for the result. When 2 pink lines appeared, she sank to the floor, her back against the bathtub. One mistake, one complication, one tiny life that would change everything. What Sarah didn't know yet was that she wasn't carrying just one child. She was carrying 4. 2 weeks passed since Sarah had discovered the pregnancy test results. She placed her hand on her stomach, which showed no visible signs of the life growing inside her. Today was the day she would tell Mark Williams about their baby. "You can do this," Sarah whispered to herself as she smoothed her uniform. She had rehearsed what to say dozens of times in her small room in the staff quarters. Jessica Williams was attending her monthly charity gala, which meant Mark would be alone in his office. Sarah had timed it perfectly. She took a deep breath and walked through the mansion toward the west wing where his home office was located. Outside his door, Sarah paused. She could hear Mark's voice, loud and confident. "That's right, Thompson. $50 million. The deal closes tomorrow." There was a pause. "Of course, I'm sure. When have I ever been wrong about property values?" Sarah waited until Mark ended his call before knocking softly on the door. "Come in," Mark called. Sarah entered the spacious office with its wall of windows overlooking the manicured gardens. Mark sat behind his large desk, not looking up from his computer. "Mr. Williams," Sarah began, her voice shakier than she intended, "I need to speak with you about something important." Mark glanced up, his blue eyes showing mild annoyance at the interruption. "Can it wait, Sarah? I'm finalizing the Thompson deal." "No, sir. It can't wait any longer." Something in her tone made Mark stop typing. He leaned back in his chair and gave her his full attention. "I'm pregnant," Sarah said simply. "And you're the father." Mark's expression changed rapidly, from confusion to shock to something darker. He stood up so quickly his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "What did you just say?" His voice was dangerously quiet. Sarah stood her ground. "I'm pregnant. About 2 months along now." Mark's face contorted with anger. "And you think it's mine? How convenient for you." "You know it's yours," Sarah said. "There hasn't been anyone else." Mark walked around his desk and stood directly in front of Sarah. "Let me guess what happens next. You want money, right? A nice big check to keep quiet and not ruin my reputation?" Sarah shook her head. "No, that's not why I'm telling you. I thought you deserved to know about your child." "My child?" Mark laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Let's be clear about something. Whatever you're carrying is not my concern. I have a wife, a company, and a reputation to protect." "I'm keeping this baby," Sarah said firmly. "I'm not asking for anything, but I thought you should know." Mark's face reddened. "You think you can trap me with this?" A maid gets pregnant and suddenly expects what? Marriage? Money? A nice house? "I don't expect anything from you," Sarah replied, struggling to stay calm. Mark yanked open a drawer in his desk and pulled out a stack of cash. "Here, this should be enough to take care of your little problem." He threw the money toward her, several $100 bills scattered across the floor. "There is no problem," Sarah said, not moving to pick up the money. "I'm having this baby." "Not in my house, you're not," Mark shouted. He grabbed Sarah's arm and pulled her toward the door. "You're fired. Get your things and get out." "You can't do this," Sarah protested as Mark pushed her into the hallway. "I can do whatever I want," Mark snarled. "I'll give you 1 hour to pack your things. If you're not gone by then, I'll have security remove you." Mark slammed the door in her face. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, then walked slowly back to her room. Tears streamed down her face as she began putting her belongings into her suitcase. 3 years of working in this house, and it would end like this. Through the thin walls, Sarah could hear Mark making phone calls. "James? Mark Williams. Listen, I need you to spread the word to the other households in Beverly Hills. Sarah Johnson is not to be hired by anyone in our circle. She's untrustworthy and tried to extort money from me." A pause. "Yes, exactly. Make sure everyone knows." Sarah wiped her tears and continued packing. She had saved some money during her time here, but not nearly enough for what was coming. She would need to find a new job quickly, but Mark was making sure that wouldn't happen in Beverly Hills. An hour later, Sarah rolled her suitcase down the hallway. Mark stood in the foyer, watching her with cold eyes. "I've left the money on the kitchen counter," he said. "Take it and disappear. If you ever try to contact me or tell anyone about your ridiculous claims, I'll deny everything and sue you for defamation." Sarah looked directly at Mark. "I never thought you were cruel until today. And I never thought you were calculating until today," he replied. "Consider yourself lucky I'm not calling the police." "For what?" Sarah asked. "For attempting to blackmail me. That's what this is, isn't it? Your word against mine? Who do you think people will believe?" Sarah picked up the money from the kitchen counter. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of refusing it. She would need every dollar now. "Goodbye, Mr. Williams," she said formally. Mark opened the front door. "If I ever see you again, you'll regret it." Sarah walked out without looking back at the mansion that had been her home for 3 years. She put her suitcase in the trunk of her old car and drove away, not knowing where to go next. Her first stop was a women's health clinic in a part of Los Angeles far from Beverly Hills. Sarah needed to confirm the pregnancy and get proper medical advice. "Congratulations, Ms. Johnson," the doctor said after examining her. "Everything looks normal so far. Let's do an ultrasound to check how far along you are." Sarah lay on the examination table as the doctor moved the ultrasound wand across her stomach. "Oh," the doctor said, looking more closely at the screen. "Is something wrong?" Sarah asked, immediately worried. "Not wrong exactly," the doctor replied slowly, "but I'm seeing multiple gestational sacs here." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked. "It means you're carrying more than one baby," the doctor explained. "In fact, I can clearly see 4 separate embryos. You're having quadruplets, Ms. Johnson." Sarah stared at the ceiling in shock. 4 babies? Are you sure?" "Absolutely positive," the doctor said, pointing to the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4. They all appear to be developing normally, but this is considered a high-risk pregnancy. You'll need specialized care." Sarah left the clinic in a daze. 4 babies. She could barely process the information. She sat in her car for a long time trying to figure out what to do next. California was no longer an option. Mark had made sure she wouldn't find work among the wealthy families, and living costs were too high for her to manage on her own. She needed to go somewhere more affordable, somewhere she could stretch her savings and start over. That evening, Sarah went to the public library and used a computer to research cities with low costs of living. After hours of searching, she decided on Columbus, Ohio. The housing was affordable, there were job opportunities, and it was far enough away from her past. Over the next few days, Sarah sold what few valuable possessions she had. She packed everything she owned into her car and prepared for the long drive across the country. On her last night in California, Sarah sat on a bench overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She placed both hands on her stomach, thinking about the 4 tiny lives growing inside her. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "I don't know how yet, but I promise I'll take care of all of you." Early the next morning, Sarah started her car and pulled onto the highway heading east. As the California coastline disappeared from her rearview mirror, she felt a strange mixture of fear and determination. Everything she had planned for her future had changed, but she would find a way to make it work. The drive to Columbus would take several days. Sarah had mapped out the most economical route, planning to sleep in cheap motels along the way. She had no idea what awaited her in Ohio, but she knew she couldn't stay where she was. As she crossed the state line, leaving California behind, Sarah turned on the radio for company. A song about new beginnings played, and she allowed herself a small smile. Whatever happened next, she would face it with courage, not just for herself, but for her children. The snowstorm hit as Sarah's car pulled into Columbus, Ohio. After 5 days of driving across the country, she was exhausted. White flakes fell so heavily she could barely see the road ahead. Her old car struggled through the snow-covered streets as she followed directions to the cheap motel she had found online. "Just one more night in a motel," Sarah said to herself. "Tomorrow I'll find a real place to live." The next morning, Sarah called a real estate agent whose advertisement promised affordable housing, no credit check required. 2 hours later, she stood in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building. "It's $550 per month," the agent, Mrs. Benson, explained. "Utilities not included. First and last month's rent required up front." Sarah looked around the small space. The paint was peeling in one corner. The kitchen was barely big enough for a mini refrigerator and a 2-burner stove, but it was clean and it had a bathtub. "I'll take it," Sarah said, counting out the cash from her dwindling savings. After signing the lease, Sarah bought a used mattress from a thrift store and some basic supplies. That night, she lay on her mattress on the floor, staring at the ceiling of her new home. "We made it to Columbus," she whispered, hands on her stomach. "Now we need jobs." The next day, Sarah dressed in her nicest clothes and began visiting restaurants in the neighborhood. At the first 3 places, the managers barely looked at her resume before saying they weren't hiring. At the 4th restaurant, the manager glanced at her midsection and said, "We need someone who can commit long-term." By afternoon, Sarah was tired and discouraged. She had one more place on her list, Millie's Diner, a small establishment with a blue awning. When she entered, a man in his 60s was wiping down the counter. "We're closed between lunch and dinner," he said without looking up. "I'm not here to eat," Sarah replied. "I'm looking for work. I have 3 years of experience as a housekeeper and I learn quickly." The man looked up, studying her face. "I'm Frank Carter. I own this place." "Sarah Johnson," she said, extending her hand. "I just moved to Columbus." Frank shook her hand. His eyes moved to her stomach, which was just beginning to show under her blouse. "When are you due?" he asked directly. Sarah hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "In about 7 months. But I can work until then, and I'll come back as soon as possible afterward." Frank rubbed his chin. "My morning waitress quit yesterday. Hours are 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, 6 days a week. Tips aren't great, but they're honest." "I'll take it," Sarah said quickly. "When can I start?" "Tomorrow, 6 sharp." 2 weeks later, Sarah had settled into a routine. She worked at Millie's Diner every day except Sundays. The pay was minimal, but the tips helped, and Frank let her eat 1 free meal per shift. One evening, Sarah was struggling to carry groceries up the 3 flights of stairs to her apartment. She was out of breath by the 2nd floor. "Let me help you with those," a voice called from above. An older woman with silver hair came down the stairs and took 2 of Sarah's bags. "I'm Eleanor Miller, apartment 312, the woman said as they climbed the final flight together. "Sarah Johnson, 309. Thank you for helping me." "Not a problem," Eleanor said, glancing at Sarah's growing belly. "How far along are you?" "Almost 3 months," Sarah replied as she unlocked her door. Eleanor followed her inside with the grocery bags. She looked around the nearly empty apartment with a critical eye. "Where's your furniture?" she asked. Sarah placed her bags on the counter. "I just moved here. I'm getting things little by little." Eleanor nodded. "Well, I have an extra chair I never use, and maybe a small table. I could bring them by tomorrow." "That's very kind, but I can't accept—" "Nonsense," Eleanor interrupted. "Neighbors help each other." The next day, Eleanor not only brought the promised furniture, but also stayed for tea. Sarah learned that Eleanor was 72 years old and had lived in the building for 15 years. "What brings you to Columbus all alone and pregnant?" Eleanor asked directly. Something about the older woman's straightforward manner made Sarah trust her. She told Eleanor a simplified version of her story, about working for a wealthy family in California and having to leave when she got pregnant. "And the father?" Eleanor asked. "Not in the picture," Sarah said firmly. "I see." Eleanor sipped her tea. "And have you seen a doctor here yet?" Sarah shook her head. "I'm looking for one that takes patients without insurance." "I know a good clinic," Eleanor said. "I'll take you next week." At the clinic, the doctor confirmed that all 4 babies were developing normally. "You've been very lucky so far," Dr. Martinez said, "but with quadruplets, we need to monitor you closely. I want to see you every 2 weeks." After the appointment, Eleanor was quiet as they walked back to their building. "I worked as a labor and delivery nurse for 40 years, she finally said. "I've seen twin births and even triplets, but never quadruplets. You're going to need help, Sarah." "I'll manage," Sarah insisted. But as the weeks passed, Sarah's body changed rapidly. By her 4th month, her diner uniform needed significant alterations. Frank noticed but said nothing until Sarah dropped a tray of food when her balance shifted unexpectedly. "Maybe we should move you to the register," he suggested, helping her clean up the mess. "I need the tips," Sarah admitted. "Waiting tables pays better than cashiering." Frank frowned. "How about this? You work the register during rush hours and tables when it's slower." As her savings dwindled and expenses loomed, Sarah started baking cookies in her apartment. Eleanor tried one and declared it the best she'd ever tasted. My friends at the senior center would love these, she said. If you made a few dozen, I could sell them for you. Sarah's first batch of 24 cookies sold out in 1 hour at the senior center. By the next week, she was filling regular orders. One night, Sarah sat at her small table with a notebook, creating a detailed budget. 4 of everything, she whispered, writing down costs for cribs, car seats, diapers, and formula. The total at the bottom of the page made her stomach tighten with anxiety. At her 6-month checkup, Dr. Martinez frowned at Sarah's blood pressure reading. "It's too high," she said, "and you're showing signs of preeclampsia. I'm putting you on bed rest for the remainder of your pregnancy." "I can't stop working," Sarah protested. "I need the money." "You need to keep these babies inside as long as possible," Dr. Martinez said firmly. "Every additional day matters for their development." When Sarah told Frank, he surprised her. "Your job will be waiting when you're ready," he promised, "and I'm sending you home with food every day." Eleanor took charge of Sarah's care, bringing her books about raising multiple babies and sharing stories from her nursing days. "The key is routine," Eleanor advised. 4 babies need a tight schedule. Word spread about Sarah's situation. The local church organized a donation drive. One Sunday, 4 men carried second-hand cribs up the 3 flights of stairs to Sarah's apartment. "We collected baby clothes too," Pastor Lewis said, as church members brought in bags of tiny outfits. Sarah was overwhelmed by the kindness of these strangers. As her due date approached, Sarah began preparing in earnest. One night, she sat in bed sewing name tags onto tiny onesies. "Emma, Lily, Sophie, and Olivia," she said, testing each name as she attached the labels. Eleanor came in with dinner and found Sarah surrounded by baby clothes. "You've decided on names?" she asked, setting down the food tray. "Yes," Sarah smiled. 4 names I've always loved." Later that night, Sarah felt a sharp pain. She gasped and grabbed her stomach. "Eleanor!" she called out, knowing the older woman was still in the living room. "Something's wrong!" Eleanor rushed in and checked Sarah quickly. "How many pains have you had?" "Just this one," Sarah said, breathing hard. "But it feels different from the practice contractions." "Let's time them," Eleanor said calmly. "It could be false labor." After an hour with no more contractions, they both relaxed. Eleanor stayed overnight just to be safe. "They're not ready yet," Eleanor said, "but soon." 2 days later, at 3 in the morning, Sarah woke up to a different kind of pain, stronger and more rhythmic. She also noticed her sheets were wet. "Eleanor," she called out to the woman who now slept on her couch most nights. "My water broke. The babies are coming." Eleanor grabbed the emergency hospital bag Sarah had packed weeks ago. "Stay calm. Breathe through the pain," she instructed as she helped Sarah out of bed. "It's too early," Sarah gasped, gripping Eleanor's arm. "They're supposed to come 2 months from now." "Quadruplets often come early," Eleanor said, her nurse training taking over. "I'll drive you to Columbus Metropolitan. They have the best neonatal unit in the city." Rain pounded against the windows as Eleanor's old car navigated the dark streets. Sarah clutched her stomach, trying to remember the breathing techniques she'd read about. "It hurts more than I expected," Sarah admitted between contractions. "We're almost there," Eleanor assured her. "You're doing great." The emergency room was quiet when they arrived. A nurse immediately recognized the situation and called for a wheelchair. "Multiple birth, 7 months along. Water broke about 40 minutes ago," Eleanor explained professionally. Within minutes, Sarah was surrounded by medical staff. A doctor in blue scrubs introduced himself as Dr. Wilson, head of the neonatal team. "Ms. Johnson, you're going into labor very early. We need to assess the situation immediately," he said, examining her. "Are you the grandmother?" he asked Eleanor. "Friend and former labor nurse," Eleanor corrected. "Can she stay with me?" Sarah asked, not wanting to be alone. Dr. Wilson nodded. "For now, yes." After a quick examination, the doctor's expression grew serious. "Ms. Johnson, Your cervix is already dilated 5 centimeters. These babies are coming today. We need to discuss risks." Sarah tried to focus through another contraction. "Will they be okay?" "They'll be very small and their lungs won't be fully developed. Each baby will need intensive care, but we have an excellent NICU team ready." He paused. "There are risks for you too. Multiple births can cause complications. Do whatever you need to save them," Sarah said firmly. The next hours passed in a blur of pain and medical terms. The delivery room filled with specialists, one team for Sarah and 4 separate teams for each baby. "I see the first one," Dr. Wilson announced after Sarah had been pushing for nearly an hour. "It's coming now." At exactly 2:15 in the morning, Emma Johnson entered the world weighing 3 pounds and 2 ounces. Her cry was thin but determined. "Baby A is a girl," the doctor announced as a nurse quickly wrapped Emma and rushed her to a waiting incubator. "Is she okay?" Sarah asked weakly. "She's breathing on her own." "That's excellent," Dr. Wilson assured her. "Now let's focus on the next one." Lily arrived 7 minutes later, followed by Sophie 3 minutes after that. Olivia, the smallest at just under 3 pounds, came last. 4 healthy girls, the doctor announced. They're small but fighting. Sarah caught only a glimpse of each daughter before they were taken to the neonatal intensive care unit. Each baby was placed in an incubator with tubes and monitors attached to their tiny bodies. They need help maintaining their temperature and monitoring their breathing, a NICU nurse explained, but they're doing remarkably well for their size. Later that day, when Sarah was stable enough to visit the NICU, she sat beside the incubators in disbelief. Each transparent box contained a tiny human with miniature features that resembled her own. "Hello, Emma, Lily, Sophie, and Olivia," she whispered, reaching through the small opening to touch Emma's hand. "I'm your mom." Eleanor stood behind her, placing a supportive hand on Sarah's shoulder. "They're beautiful." "They're so small," Sarah said, tears flowing freely. "Will they be okay?" "Babies are stronger than they look," Eleanor assured her, "and these 4 seem particularly determined." On Sarah's 3rd day in the hospital, a woman from the billing department visited her room. "Ms. Johnson, I need to discuss financial arrangements," she began formally. "Your insurance status is listed as self-pay?" "I don't have insurance," Sarah admitted, "but I'm applying for emergency assistance." The woman looked uncomfortable. "The costs for premature quadruplets in the NICU are substantial. We're already at $70,000, and that will increase by approximately $8,000 per day." Sarah felt the room spin. "I can't possibly pay that." "I understand. That's why we need to discuss assistance programs immediately." Eleanor stepped in. "I'll help her complete the applications. Sarah needs to focus on her recovery and the babies." For the next 3 weeks, Sarah spent every possible moment in the NICU. Between visits, Eleanor helped her apply for medical assistance, WIC, and emergency housing support. The nurses taught Sarah how to feed her tiny daughters through tubes, change diapers smaller than her hand, and interpret the many monitors attached to them. "You're a natural mother," Nurse Garcia commented one day. 4 babies at once, and you already know each one's different needs." Sarah smiled tiredly. "They might look identical, but they're already showing their personalities. Emma always wants attention first. Lily seems calmer. Sophie watches everything, and Olivia needs extra cuddling." After 5 weeks in the NICU, Emma and Sophie were strong enough to go home. Lily and Olivia followed a week later. Sarah's tiny apartment suddenly seemed even smaller, with 4 cribs arranged against the walls. The living room became a nursery with baby supplies stacked in every available space. "How am I supposed to care for all of them?" Sarah asked Eleanor in a moment of panic, their first night home. "One baby at a time," Eleanor said practically, "and I'll stay here for the first few weeks." Their routine became military in its precision. Feeding 4 babies took nearly 2 hours, and by the time the last baby finished, it was almost time to start again. Sleep became a distant memory for Sarah. Frank from the diner visited with food and news. "The morning shift is yours whenever you're ready," he promised, "and some of the regulars started a collection for you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Thank everyone for me. I hope to be back soon." "Take your time," Frank insisted. "Those little ones need you more than my customers do." By the time the quadruplets were 3 months old, Sarah knew she needed to return to work. The medical assistance covered most of the hospital bills, but daily expenses were depleting her savings. "I can watch them while you work morning shift," Eleanor offered, "but you'll need more help for full-time work." Sarah nodded. "I've been thinking about that. What if I cleaned offices at night? Many buildings need cleaners after business hours. I could take the babies with me if the buildings are empty." "That's a lot of work," Eleanor warned. "4 babies need a lot of support," Sarah replied simply. Soon, Sarah was working at Millie's diner from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Eleanor watched the girls during those hours. Then Sarah would nap when she got home, care for the babies in the evening, and head out at 9 at night to clean offices, sometimes with the quadruplets sleeping in portable cribs she brought along. On weekends, Sarah baked cookies, cakes, and pastries to sell to Eleanor's friends and neighbors. Every extra dollar went into a special savings account for the girls. "You can't keep this pace forever," Eleanor warned one day when she found Sarah asleep standing up, a bottle still in her hand. "Just until they're a little older," Sarah insisted. "I'm fine." The community around them grew. Frank organized a meal train with diner regulars bringing dinner 3 times a week. A local church donated clothes and toys. The pediatrician offered discounted visits. "It takes a village," the pastor said when church members delivered 4 matching high chairs. "I never expected such kindness," Sarah admitted. Before she knew it, a year had passed. The tiny, premature babies were now 4 active, healthy 1-year-olds, each developing their own personality despite their identical appearance. On their first birthday, Sarah decorated the apartment with balloons and streamers. Frank brought a cake from the diner. Eleanor invited a few neighbors. The girls sat in a row in their high chairs, faces soon covered with frosting. "Make a wish," Eleanor told Sarah as they watched the girls smash cake with tiny fists. Sarah looked at her daughters, Emma demanding more cake, Lily carefully examining the frosting, Sophie methodically eating 1 fingerful at a time, and Olivia giggling at the mess. "I don't need to wish for anything else," Sarah said softly. "I have everything important right here." That night, after tucking her daughters into their cribs, Sarah sat in the darkness, watching them sleep. 1 year of incredible hardship was behind them. She had no idea what challenges lay ahead, but looking at her 4 identical daughters, she felt ready to face anything. 5 years passed quickly. Sarah's tiny daughters grew from toddlers taking their first steps to active 6-year-olds preparing for their first day of kindergarten. On a warm September morning, Sarah walked the girls to Columbus Elementary School, each quadruplet wearing the same style backpack in different colors: Emma's red, Lily's purple, Sophie's blue, and Olivia's green. "Remember, listen to Ms. Patterson and raise your hand if you need anything," Sarah instructed as they approached the school building. "Will the other kids know which one is which?" Lily asked, the most worried about making friends. "That's why we have different colored backpacks and name tags," Sarah explained. "And Ms. Patterson already knows all of you from our meeting last week." Emma, always the boldest, marched ahead. "I can tell them apart if they get confused." Inside the classroom, Ms. Patterson had already prepared a special seating chart. "Johnson girls, I have your spots ready," she said cheerfully. "Emma at the red table, Lily at the purple one, Sophie blue, and Olivia green." Sarah knelt to give each daughter a goodbye hug. "I'll pick you up at 3 o'clock. Have a wonderful first day." "Bye, Mom," they called in near unison. With the girls in school, Sarah finally had time to expand her baking business beyond weekend sales to Eleanor's friends. She visited the Columbus Farmers Market office that afternoon. "I'd like information about renting a stand," she told the market manager. "It's $75 per Saturday," he explained. "You need your own table, signs, and proper food handling certification." 2 weeks later, Sarah set up her first official market stand. She had spent evenings painting a large wooden sign that read, "Sarah's Sweet Creations," in bright letters. Her table displayed cookies, muffins, and small cakes arranged on colorful plates. The first day was slow until Sarah brought the quadruplets after school. 4 identical little girls in matching aprons helping their mother attracted customers immediately. "Are they all yours?" people would ask in amazement. "Yes, these are my daughters. Emma, Lily, Sophie, and Olivia," Sarah would respond proudly. Over the following months, Sarah noticed how each girl naturally took to different tasks at the market stand. Emma handled the money box, confidently making change and talking to customers. "That's $5 for the cookies," she would say with authority. "Would you like a bag?" Lily, the artistic one, decorated the cookie bags with small flower drawings that customers adored. "Look what Lily drew on my bag last week," one regular customer said, showing Sarah how she'd saved the paper. "She's got real talent." Sophie, with her precise mind, kept track of inventory. "Mom, we have 14 chocolate chip cookies, 9 blueberry muffins, and 3 lemon cakes left," she would report without having to count twice. Olivia surprised everyone with her practical skills, fixing the wobbly market table when one leg threatened to collapse. "It just needed something flat under this part," she explained, wedging a piece of cardboard perfectly into place. As the business grew, their small apartment became increasingly cramped. The kitchen barely had enough counter space for Sarah's baking, and the girls were outgrowing their shared bedroom. "I found a house for rent," Sarah told Eleanor one evening. "It's nothing fancy, but it has 3 bedrooms and a big kitchen." The modest rental house on Maple Street became their new home. The larger kitchen doubled as Sarah's baking workspace, with shelves full of ingredients and baking pans. The girls shared 2 bedrooms, Emma and Lily in one, Sophie and Olivia in the other. On moving day, their community showed its strength. Frank brought his pickup truck to transport furniture. Regular customers from the farmer's market carried boxes. Eleanor supervised everything from her chair on the front porch. "I never expected to have so many people in my life when I came to Columbus," Sarah said to Eleanor as they watched the helpers. "You've built something special here," Eleanor replied. "Not just a business, but a community." As the girls grew more aware of the world around them, questions about their family structure emerged. One night, as Sarah tucked Emma into bed, the question she had been dreading finally came. "Mom, why don't we have a daddy like other kids?" Emma asked. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed. "Some families have a mom and a dad. Some have 2 moms or 2 dads. Some, like ours, have just a mom." "But we must have a dad somewhere," Emma persisted. "We didn't just appear." Sarah took a deep breath. "You do have a father. He wasn't ready to be a dad when you were born." "Does he know about us?" Emma asked. "He knows I was going to have a baby, but not that I had 4 wonderful girls," Sarah answered carefully. "Will we ever meet him?" Lily called from her bed across the room. "I don't know, sweetie. Maybe someday when you're older." These conversations became more frequent as the girls encountered more traditional family structures at school. Sarah was careful to answer truthfully without sharing details that might hurt them. Privately, Sarah kept track of Mark Williams' life through occasional internet searches. She maintained a hidden folder with news clippings about his business successes. One article showed him with Jessica at a charity gala. They looked perfect together, smiling for the cameras. One evening, after the girls were asleep, Sarah found a recent news story. Williams Enterprises CEO considering state Senate run. The article quoted Mark saying, "I believe in traditional values and strong families." Sarah closed her laptop, feeling a complex mix of emotions. The man who had thrown cash at her to fix her problem was now positioning himself as a champion of family values. The next morning at the farmer's market, a customer commented on how much the girls looked alike. They have the same eyes, the woman said. So blue and intense. They must get those from their father. Sarah nodded politely. Yes, they do. Despite the questions about their father, the girls thrived. Their personalities continued to develop distinctly. Emma became the leader in their group of friends, organizing games and solving disputes. Lily joined the school art club, where her drawings won praise from teachers. Sophie excelled in math and reading, often helping her sisters with homework. Olivia joined a science club, fascinated by how things worked. Their 7th birthday party was a community celebration. Frank closed the diner early to attend. Eleanor brought a handmade quilt with 4 matching panels. Ms. Patterson came with books for each girl. "Make a wish," Sarah said as the girls prepared to blow out their candles together. That night, Sarah added a new article to her hidden folder. It featured Mark and Jessica Williams at a campaign fundraiser. The caption read, "Williams launches exploratory committee for Senate run, promising to focus on family-first policies." Sarah placed the clipping in the folder and slid it back into her desk drawer. Her daughters were growing up without knowing half of their heritage. She wondered how long she could answer their questions with simplified truths. 5 more years would pass before she would need to tell them everything. By then, they would be old enough to understand, and old enough to have their own opinions about the father who never knew them. The Johnson quadruplets celebrated their 12th birthday with a party at the local park. Friends from school, neighbors, and their extended community gathered around a picnic table decorated with balloons. Sarah had rented the small picnic shelter, setting out 4 identical cakes. Each girl got her own to blow out candles and make wishes. Sarah's baking business had grown enough for her to rent a small commercial kitchen space downtown, though she still worked part-time at Millie's Diner for steady income. Her Sarah's Sweet Creations stand at the farmer's market had become one of the most popular stops every Saturday. Eleanor, now 84 years old but still sharp-minded, sat in a place of honor at the party. Frank from the diner brought his famous lemonade, and Ms. Patterson, now their 6th-grade teacher, helped organize games. As Sarah watched her daughters laugh with their friends, she marveled at how different they had become despite their identical faces. Emma wore her hair in a short, practical cut and preferred sports clothes. Lily kept her hair long with colorful clips and wore artistic, bohemian outfits. Sophie chose neat classic styles and always had a book nearby. Olivia favored practical clothes with many pockets for the small tools she always carried. After the party, the family returned home tired but happy. Sarah started cleaning up while the girls sorted through their gifts. "Mom, can we talk to you about something important?" Emma asked, suddenly appearing in the kitchen doorway. Her sisters stood behind her. Sarah recognized the serious expression on Emma's face. "Of course. Is everything okay?" "We want to talk about our father," Emma said directly. "All of us together." Sarah's hands froze in the middle of wrapping leftover cake. This moment had been coming for years. She nodded slowly. "Let's sit in the living room." The girls arranged themselves on the couch while Sarah took the armchair across from them. Emma, always the spokesperson, leaned forward. "We're 12 now," she began. "We deserve to know who our father is. It's our right." "We're not babies anymore," Lily added. Sarah took a deep breath. "You're right. You're old enough to know the full story." "You've always said he wasn't ready to be a dad," Sophie said. "But that doesn't tell us who he is or why he's never contacted us." "Did he die?" Olivia asked quietly. "Is that why you don't talk about him?" "No, he didn't die," Sarah replied. "Wait here a moment." Sarah went to her bedroom and opened her desk drawer. She removed the folder she had maintained for 12 years, filled with articles and information about Mark Williams. When she returned to the living room, the girls were whispering among themselves. "This is your father," Sarah said, opening the folder and showing them a recent business magazine with Mark Williams on the cover. "His name is Mark Williams. He's the CEO of Williams Enterprises, a company that builds luxury properties. 4 identical pairs of blue eyes, his eyes, stared at the photo. "He's rich?" Emma asked, looking at the headline about Mark's business success. "Yes, very," Sarah confirmed. "He lives in Beverly Hills, California." Sophie studied the photo carefully. "We have his eyes." Sarah nodded. "You do? And his height, I think. You're all taller than me already." "Why doesn't he want us?" Lily asked, her voice small. Sarah sat back down, choosing her words carefully. "I worked as a maid in his house for 3 years. His wife, Jessica, was away on a trip, and Mark and I became close. When I told him I was pregnant, he was very angry. He fired me and told me to leave California." "Did he know there were 4 of us?" Olivia asked. "No, I didn't know myself until after I left," Sarah explained. "He gave me some money to leave and told me he never wanted to see me again. I used that money to start our new life here in Columbus." Emma's face flushed with anger. "He just threw money at you and sent you away? That's terrible." "He was afraid I would damage his reputation," Sarah said. "He and his wife are very important in California society." "Does he even know we exist now?" Sophie asked. "I've never contacted him again," Sarah admitted. "He made it clear he didn't want to be involved." The girls fell silent, processing this information. Sarah watched their faces, seeing hurt, confusion, and curiosity. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," she said. "I wanted to protect you." "We have a right to know who we are," Emma insisted. Later that night, after their mother went to bed, the girls gathered in Emma and Lily's bedroom. "I want to know more about him," Lily whispered. "Me too," Sophie agreed. "We could look him up online at the school library tomorrow." "Mom would be upset if she knew we were researching him," Olivia cautioned. "She doesn't need to know yet," Emma decided. "We deserve to learn about our father." The next day, during their library period, the quadruplets used the school computers to search for information about Mark Williams. They discovered that Williams Enterprises was one of the largest luxury real estate companies in the country. Mark Williams was worth millions of dollars and lived in a mansion in Beverly Hills with his wife Jessica. "Look at this," Sophie whispered to her sisters, pointing at her screen. "They host a huge Christmas party every year. It's covered in magazines and social media with a hashtag called Williams Winter Wonderland. It says here that politicians, celebrities, and business leaders attend," Lily read from another article. "It's on December 25th every year." "That's in 2 months," Emma noted, her mind already forming a plan. Over the next several days, the girls collected every piece of information they could find about Mark Williams and his annual Christmas party. They printed photos of his mansion, articles about his business, and social media posts about previous Christmas celebrations. At home, they spread their research across the floor of their shared bedroom, careful to put everything away when their mother might see. "What exactly are we trying to do?" Olivia asked practically. "I think we should meet him," Emma stated. "Go to his house during the Christmas party and introduce ourselves." "That's crazy," Sophie said. "California is thousands of miles away." "We could ask Mom to take us," Lily suggested. "She would never agree," Emma countered. "We won't know unless we ask," Sophie reasoned. "We should present it logically." The quadruplets spent a week preparing their presentation. Sophie created charts showing the distance to California and estimated costs. Olivia built a model of Mark's mansion using cardboard and printouts. Lily drew pictures of how they imagined the meeting would go. Emma wrote a speech explaining why they deserved to meet their father. On a Saturday morning when Sarah was home from work, the girls called a family meeting. "Mom, we've been thinking about what you told us," Emma began, standing in front of their carefully arranged presentation materials. Sarah looked concerned as she noticed the photos and printouts. "What is all this?" "Research about our father," Sophie explained. "We know he hosts a big Christmas party every year in Beverly Hills." "We want to meet him," Emma stated firmly. "We want to go to California for Christmas and attend his party." Sarah's face paled. "That's not possible. We can't just show up at his house." Why not? Emma challenged. He's our father. We have a right to meet him. It's not that simple, Sarah protested. He made it clear he doesn't want to be involved in our lives. He doesn't even know about us, Lily pointed out. The real us. 4 people, not just one baby. We don't want his money, Sophie added quickly, seeing the worry in her mother's eyes. We just want him to know we exist, Olivia said quietly. Sarah looked at the materials they had gathered. Photos of Mark's mansion, articles about his business success, social media posts showing his perfect life with Jessica. Girls, I understand why you want this, but showing up at his Christmas party would create a scene. It could hurt all of us. We deserve to know our father, Emma insisted, and he deserves to know about us too. Even if he's a bad person who sent you away, Lily added, we still want to see him for ourselves. Sarah rubbed her temples. I need to think about this. It's a lot to consider. That night, Sarah called Eleanor, explaining the girls' request. They've done research, Eleanor. They found out about his annual Christmas party and want to go confront him. I don't know what to do. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. They're not babies anymore, Sarah. Maybe they need this closure. What if he rejects them again? What if he hurts them like he hurt me? They have you, Eleanor said simply. And they have each other. Maybe they're stronger than you think. Over the next week, the girls continued their campaign. They showed Sarah articles about Mark's political aspirations and his family values platform. He's a hypocrite, Emma pointed out. He talks about family values but abandoned his own children. Finally, Sarah called another family meeting. I've decided that we can go to California for Christmas, she announced. But I have conditions. We will not cause a scene. We will be respectful. And if at any point I think this is becoming harmful to you, we leave immediately. The quadruplets cheered and hugged their mother. Eleanor's sister Patricia lives in San Diego, Sarah continued. She's agreed to let us stay with her. It's about 2 hours from Beverly Hills. Thank you, Mom, Emma said, suddenly serious. This means everything to us. Sarah nodded, hoping she wasn't making a terrible mistake. I'll book the flights tomorrow. That night she lay awake, wondering what Mark Williams would do when faced with 4 identical 12-year-old daughters on his doorstep at Christmas. After 12 years of building a life without him, they were about to bring him forcefully into their world, whether he wanted to be there or not. The flight to California was the first time the quadruplets had ever been on a plane. They pressed their faces against the windows, watching as Columbus disappeared beneath the clouds. Sarah sat beside them, still unsure if this journey was the right decision. How long until we get to California? Lily asked, the most nervous of the 4. About 5 hours, Sarah answered. Then we'll meet Patricia at the airport. Patricia, Eleanor's younger sister, greeted them at San Diego International Airport with a warm smile. She was 70 years old with the same kind eyes as Eleanor, though her hair was still more brown than gray. You must be Sarah, she said, giving Sarah a hug. And these must be the famous quadruplets Eleanor has told me so much about. The girls introduced themselves one by one. I'm Emma, said the first, standing tall with confidence. I'm Lily, said the second with a small wave. I'm Sophie, said the third, extending her hand formally. I'm Olivia, said the fourth with a quiet nod. Patricia led them to her car. My bungalow isn't very big, but I've cleared out the guest room for all of you. I think we'll manage for a week. Patricia's home was a small, cheerful house with a garden of cacti and desert plants in the front yard. Inside, the walls were covered with colorful paintings, many done by Patricia herself. I taught art at the elementary school for 40 years, she explained as the girls admired her work. That evening, after settling in, the quadruplets spread their research materials across Patricia's dining table. Maps of Beverly Hills, printouts of the Williams mansion, and social media posts about previous Christmas parties covered the surface. The party starts at 6 o'clock, Sophie reported, pointing to an invitation someone had posted online. Guests arrive between 6 and 7. I think we should arrive at 8. Emma suggested. When the party is in full swing but not too late? Sarah watched nervously as her daughters planned their confrontation with military precision. "Girls, we need to talk about what might happen," she said carefully. "Mark might not be happy to see us. He might ask us to leave. We're prepared for that," Emma responded. "But he needs to see us first. He needs to know we exist." Patricia, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "You girls need something special to wear. Something that makes a statement." The next morning, Patricia took them shopping at a mall in San Diego. In the children's department of a fancy store, she helped them select 4 identical red dresses. "Red is perfect for Christmas," Patricia said, "and you'll stand out in a crowd." "That's the point," Emma agreed with a determined look. While the girls tried on their dresses, Patricia pulled Sarah aside. "Are you okay with all this? You seem worried." Sarah sighed. "I'm terrified. Mark can be harsh. I don't want the girls to get hurt." "Children need to learn the truth about their parents eventually," Patricia said gently, "even when that truth is difficult." Back at the bungalow, Patricia helped the girls practice what they might say to Mark. "Hello, Mr. Williams. I'm Emma Johnson. This is Lily, Sophie, and Olivia. We're your daughters," Emma rehearsed. "Maybe don't call him Mr. Williams," Patricia suggested. "Try Dad instead. That will have more impact." "He doesn't deserve to be called Dad," Emma objected. "This isn't about what he deserves," Patricia explained. "It's about making him understand who you are immediately." Meanwhile, in Beverly Hills, Mark and Jessica Williams were finalizing details for their annual Christmas party. Their mansion was already being decorated by a team of professionals who had transformed the entrance hall into a winter wonderland with white and silver decorations. "The guest list is at 300 people, Jessica told Mark as they reviewed details in his home office. "The governor confirmed yesterday." "Perfect," Mark replied. "And Johnson from the campaign team will be there to discuss strategy?" "Yes, he'll arrive early to brief you," Jessica confirmed. "This party will be the unofficial launch of your Senate campaign." "Everything needs to be perfect," Mark insisted. "The media will be watching." 3 days before Christmas, Sarah received a call from Frank at Millie's Diner. "How's California?" he asked. "Beautiful but stressful," Sarah admitted. "The girls are excited, but I'm having second thoughts. Maybe this is a mistake." "Those girls have your strength," Frank reassured her. "Whatever happens, they'll handle it." "What if he hurts them like he hurt me?" Sarah whispered. "Then they'll know the truth about him," Frank replied. "Sometimes knowing the truth is better than wondering forever." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She went to the kitchen for a glass of water and found all 4 girls sitting at the table in their pajamas. "What are you doing up so late?" she asked. "We heard you walking around," Sophie explained. "Are you okay, Mom?" Sarah sat down with them. "I'm worried about what might happen at the party. I'm afraid your father might reject you again, and I couldn't bear to see you hurt." The girls exchanged looks. Then Lily reached out and took Sarah's hand. "Mom, we know this might not go well," she said softly. "But we need to try." "We've talked about it," Emma added. "Even if he's terrible to us, at least we'll know. We won't have to wonder anymore." "And we have each other," Olivia pointed out quietly. "And we have you." Sarah looked at her daughters, surprised by their maturity and emotional strength. "When did you all get so wise?" she asked with a small smile. "We had a good teacher," Sophie replied, squeezing her mother's hand. On Christmas morning, Patricia's house was filled with the smell of cinnamon rolls and the sound of excited voices. The girls exchanged small gifts they had brought from Ohio, and Patricia gave each of them a delicate silver bracelet. "For good luck today," she explained as she fastened the bracelets around their wrists. In Beverly Hills, the Williams mansion was transformed into a spectacular holiday showcase. Staff hung crystal decorations from the ceilings and arranged elaborate food displays on long tables. A 20-foot Christmas tree dominated the grand entryway, decorated with thousands of white lights and silver ornaments. Mark stood in his office, practicing his informal campaign announcement speech in the mirror. As I look to the future, I see a path where family values guide our policies, he rehearsed. Strong families build strong communities. Late in the afternoon, Sarah helped her daughters prepare for the evening. For the first time in years, they dressed identically. Red dresses, black shoes, and hair styled the same way. Sarah applied light makeup to each girl's face, emphasizing their identical blue eyes. "You all look beautiful," she said, her voice catching. "So do you, Mom," Lily replied, admiring Sarah in her simple black dress. Patricia drove them to Beverly Hills, navigating through the holiday traffic. As they approached the wealthy neighborhood, the girls pressed their faces to the windows, amazed by the enormous houses with their elaborate decorations. "Which one is his?" Emma asked as they drove slowly down a palm-lined street. "That one." Sarah pointed to a massive mansion at the end of the street. Luxury cars were already lined up in the circular driveway as valets helped guests from their vehicles. Patricia parked a block away. "I'll wait here in the car," she said. "Take your time. I'll be right here when you're ready to leave." Sarah and the quadruplets got out of the car. The girls stood in a row, straightening each other's dresses and checking their appearances one last time. "Remember what we practiced," Emma told her sisters. "I'll speak first, then each of us will introduce ourselves." Sarah took a deep breath. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" 4 identical faces nodded in unison. "Let's go then," Sarah said. They began walking toward the mansion, their footsteps in perfect sync. Christmas music and laughter drifted from the open windows of the house. Through the large front windows, they could see people in expensive clothes mingling with drinks in their hands. As they approached the front gate, a security guard stepped forward. "Invitations, please?" Emma straightened her shoulders. "We're here to see Mark Williams. We're his daughters." The guard looked confused as he glanced between the 4 identical girls. "I don't think Mr. Williams has daughters." "Yes, he does," Emma insisted. "He just doesn't know it yet." The guard hesitated, then spoke into a radio attached to his jacket. After a brief conversation, he opened the gate. "Someone will meet you at the front door." They walked up the long driveway toward the mansion. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as memories of this place flooded back. She had once cleaned these windows, dusted these statues, walked these paths as a maid. Now she was returning with 4 daughters Mark had never met. At the massive front door, a woman in a black uniform greeted them. "May I help you?" she asked politely. "We're here to see Mark Williams," Emma repeated. "It's a family matter." The woman looked uncertain but nodded. "Please wait here." As they stood on the doorstep, the quadruplets clutched each other's hands. Sarah stood behind them, her mind racing with memories of the last time she had left this house. Alone, pregnant, and heartbroken. Now they were back, not seeking revenge or money, but simply acknowledgement. A recognition that these 4 beautiful, intelligent girls existed because of choices Mark had made 12 years ago. The door opened. Mark Williams himself stood in the doorway. Mark Williams stood frozen in the doorway, his welcoming smile vanishing as he stared at the 4 identical girls in red dresses. Behind him, the sounds of his Christmas party filled the air, glasses clinking, soft music playing, guests laughing. For several seconds, no one spoke. The quadruplets had rehearsed this moment countless times, but now that it was here, they hesitated. Then Emma, always the leader, stepped forward. She held up a large card with the word "Merry" written on it. Her sisters followed her lead, each holding up their own cards. Lily's said Christmas, Sophie's said Dad, and Olivia's had a large red heart. "Hello, Dad," Emma said clearly. "I'm Emma Johnson." "I'm Lily Johnson," Lily continued, her voice slightly shaky. "I'm Sophie Johnson," Sophie said, standing tall. "I'm Olivia Johnson," Olivia finished quietly. Mark's face drained of all color. His blue eyes, the exact same shade as the girl's, widened in shock. He gripped the doorframe to steady himself. Then he saw Sarah standing behind the girls. 12 years had passed since he had thrown money at her and ordered her to leave his house. She looked different now, more confident, her hair shorter, her eyes steadier as she met his gaze. "Sarah?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "What is this?" A woman's voice came from behind Mark. Jessica Williams appeared at his side, elegant in a sparkling silver dress. She looked from Mark to the 4 identical girls on the doorstep, confusion evident on her face. "Who are these children?" she asked. Mark tried to close the door. "This isn't the time." Emma quickly stuck her foot in the doorway, preventing it from closing. "We're not leaving until you acknowledge us," she said firmly. "We're your daughters." Behind them on the driveway, a couple arriving late for the party slowed their steps, watching the scene with interest. The woman took out her phone. Mark's eyes darted around, noticing people beginning to pay attention. His face flushed with anger, but he forced a tight smile. "Please come inside," he said, opening the door wider. "We can discuss this privately." He ushered the group through the grand entryway, past the massive Christmas tree, and down a hallway to his study, away from the curious eyes of his guests. But it was too late. Whispers had already begun spreading through the party. Phones appeared as people texted friends about the unexpected drama. Inside the wood-paneled study, Mark closed the door firmly and turned to face them. His shock had transformed into cold fury. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, glaring at Sarah. "Showing up at my home at my Christmas party with these girls? Is this some kind of extortion attempt?" "We just wanted to meet you," Lily said before Sarah could respond. Mark ignored her, focusing his anger on Sarah. "How much? How much money will it take for you to leave and never contact me again?" "This isn't about money," Sarah said calmly. "The girls wanted to meet their father. They have that right." "Their father?" Jessica repeated, looking more closely at the quadruplets. "Mark, what is she talking about?" Mark paced across the study. "This is absurd. You have no proof these girls are related to me." "We don't need proof," Sophie said, stepping forward. "Look at our eyes. Everyone says we have our father's eyes." Jessica moved closer to the girls, studying their faces. She reached out and gently touched Sophie's cheek, then looked at her husband. "These girls have your eyes, Mark," she said slowly. "And the shape of their face. It's like looking at your mother's old photos." "This is ridiculous," Mark sputtered. "Sarah worked in our house 12 years ago. We had a brief... It was nothing. She's clearly coached these girls to say they're mine." "You fired me when I told you I was pregnant," Sarah said. "You threw money at me and told me to get out of your house. What I didn't know then was that I was carrying quadruplets." "Quadruplets?" Jessica whispered, looking at the 4 identical faces with new understanding. Outside in the hallway, footsteps approached. There was a knock on the door, and a man in a tuxedo poked his head in. "Mark, the governor is asking for you. It's almost time for your speech." "Tell him I'll be there shortly, James," Mark said tensely. As the door closed, Emma spoke up. "Are you going to make a speech about family values? That's what your campaign website says you stand for." Mark's head snapped toward her. "How do you know about my campaign?" "We did research," Emma explained. "We know everything about you. Your company, your house, your wife, your political plans." "What do you want?" Mark demanded. "Money? Because if that's it, I can write a check right now and we can end this." "We don't want your money," Sophie said clearly. "We just wanted to meet you. To know where we come from," Olivia added quietly. "You abandoned our mom," Lily said, tears forming in her eyes. "You didn't even care what happened to us." Mark's face reddened. "Your mother should never have brought you here. This is inappropriate and disruptive." From the pocket of his suit jacket, Mark pulled out his phone. "I'm calling security to escort you out." "Put the phone down, Mark." Jessica's voice was quiet but firm. She had been watching the exchange silently, her expression moving from confusion to understanding. "These children look exactly like you," Jessica continued. "The timing matches your indiscretion while I was in Europe. And most importantly, they're children. Our guests can wait." In the main part of the house, the party continued. A man with a press badge from the Los Angeles Times stood near the study door, typing rapidly on his phone. He had been invited to cover Mark's unofficial campaign announcement but had stumbled onto a much bigger story. Inside the study, Jessica approached Sarah. "All these years, I had no idea. Mark told me he fired you because you were stealing." Sarah shook her head. "I never stole anything. He fired me because I was pregnant, and he didn't want the responsibility." Jessica turned to look at the quadruplets, who stood together, identical in their red dresses. "4 daughters," she said softly. "4 beautiful girls." Mark interrupted, his voice hard. "This changes nothing. I'll have my lawyer contact you tomorrow, Sarah. We can discuss a suitable arrangement for child support with appropriate confidentiality agreements. We're not signing anything that prevents the girls from having a relationship with you if they want one," Sarah replied firmly. "A relationship?" Mark laughed coldly. "I have a life, a company, political aspirations. I can't suddenly add 4 12-year-old daughters to the mix." Jessica had been moving slowly around the room, studying each girl's face. Now she stopped in front of Emma, the most defiant of the 4. "You have his mother's chin," Jessica said thoughtfully, "and his determination, I think." She turned to face her husband. 12 years, Mark. You've lied to me for 12 years." "I didn't lie," Mark protested. "I just didn't tell you about a problem that was handled." "A problem?" Jessica repeated, her voice rising. "These girls are not a problem. They're children. Your children. Human beings you abandoned." For the first time, Mark looked uncomfortable. "Jessica, please. We can discuss this later, privately." "No, I don't think we will," Jessica replied coldly. Then she did something unexpected. She walked to stand beside Sarah and the quadruplets. "These girls are your children and you abandoned them. I could have forgiven a mistake, Mark. I cannot forgive cruelty to children." The door opened again and James reappeared. "Mark, I'm sorry to interrupt, but people are asking questions. There's a reporter who seems very interested in who these girls are." Mark looked panicked. "Stall them. Tell them I'll be out in 5 minutes." After James left, Mark turned to Sarah. "Name your price. Whatever it takes to keep this quiet." "It's too late for that," Sarah said. "The girls wanted to meet you. Now they have. What happens next is up to you." Mark looked at his daughters, truly seeing them for the first time. 4 pairs of eyes, his eyes, stared back at him with expressions ranging from anger to curiosity. "You should go now," he said finally. "My lawyer will contact you." Emma stepped forward. "We're not just going to disappear. We exist. We're your daughters, whether you want us or not." "Emma," Sarah said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder, "we've done what we came to do. Let's go." Jessica moved to the door. "I'll see them out, Mark. You should prepare your speech. I'm sure you'll want to revise the part about family values." As Jessica led Sarah and the girls through a side hallway to avoid the main party, she spoke quietly to Sarah. "I'd like to talk to you, privately. Can I call you tomorrow?" Sarah nodded, surprised. "Yes, of course." At the side door, Jessica looked at the quadruplets one more time. "I'm sorry you had to meet your father this way." "He wasn't always like this." She hesitated, then added, "It was nice to meet you, Emma, Lily, Sophie, and Olivia." As they walked back to Patricia's waiting car, the girls were unusually quiet. The confrontation they had planned for so long had happened, but the outcome wasn't what any of them had expected. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked as they reached the car. Emma nodded firmly. "We did what we came to do. He knows we exist now." "I didn't expect his wife to be nice," Lily said, confusion in her voice. "Did you see his face when he first saw us?" Sophie asked. He knew immediately who we were. Olivia, who had said the least during the confrontation, finally spoke. He didn't want us then. He doesn't want us now. Sarah put her arm around Olivia's shoulders. It's a lot for anyone to process. We've had 12 years to know about him. He's had less than an hour to learn about you. As Patricia drove them away from Beverly Hills, none of them realized that the reporter from the Los Angeles Times had already published the first version of his story online. By morning, everyone would know about Mark Williams's secret quadruplets. The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of her phone ringing. The caller ID showed it was Frank from Millie's Diner. "Sarah, have you seen the news?" Frank asked urgently. "No, we just woke up. What's happening?" Sarah asked, sitting up in bed. "Your visit to the Williams house is everywhere. The headline says, 'Quadruplets crash billionaire's Christmas party. Meet their father for first time.' There's a photo of the girls on the doorstep." Sarah's stomach dropped. "How is that possible? We were only there for 20 minutes. Someone at the party must have talked to the press. Are the girls okay?" "They're still asleep. I need to check the news," Sarah said. "I'll call you back." Sarah hurried to the kitchen where Patricia was making coffee. "Did you see?" Patricia asked, showing Sarah her tablet. The story was on every major news site. There was indeed a blurry photo of the girls standing at Mark's door in their red dresses. The article quoted an unnamed party guest describing the emotional confrontation and mentioned Mark's political aspirations. "This is bad," Sarah whispered. Within minutes, her phone started ringing again. This time, it was a number she didn't recognize. After 3 more calls from unknown numbers, she turned her phone off. The girls came into the kitchen, still in their pajamas. "Mom, we're all over the internet," Emma said, holding Patricia's tablet. "Someone at the party posted about us." "I know," Sarah replied. "I just found out too." "Is Dad in trouble?" Lily asked. The word Dad sounded strange coming from her mouth. "I think we all need to eat breakfast and figure out what to do next," Patricia suggested calmly. As they ate pancakes, a car pulled up outside. Patricia looked through the window. "There's a man in a suit at the door," she reported. When Patricia answered the door, the man introduced himself as David Cohen, Mark Williams's personal attorney. Patricia invited him in reluctantly. "Ms. Johnson," Cohen said formally, "Mr. Williams has asked me to discuss the situation with you privately." Sarah nodded. "Girls, please go to your room for a little while." Once the girls had left, Cohen placed a thick document on the table. "Mr. Williams is prepared to offer a very generous settlement," he began. "Child support backdated to the girl's birth, college funds for each girl, and a housing allowance." "That sounds reasonable," Sarah said cautiously. "In exchange," Cohen continued, "you and the girls will sign confidentiality agreements. No further public statements about Mr. Williams, no social media posts, and strictly limited visitation rights with proper supervision." Sarah's expression hardened. "So he wants to pay us to disappear again?" "Mr. Williams is concerned about his privacy and his reputation. These terms are extremely generous." "I won't sign anything that prevents my daughters from having a relationship with their father if they choose to," Sarah said firmly. Cohen's face remained neutral. "I'll relay your concerns to Mr. Williams. In the meantime, I strongly recommend avoiding the press." After Cohen left, the girls bombarded Sarah with questions. "What did he say?" Emma demanded. "Your father offered money in exchange for our silence," Sarah explained honestly. "Did you take it?" Sophie asked. "No, I told him I wouldn't sign anything that keeps you from knowing your father." "Does he want to know us?" Lily asked hopefully. Sarah hesitated. "I think he's mostly concerned about his image right now. Give him time." Later that day, Sarah's phone rang again. This time it was Jessica Williams. "Hello, Sarah," Jessica said, her voice surprisingly calm. "I wonder if we could meet tomorrow. Just the 2 of us." Sarah was shocked. Yes, I suppose so." There's a coffee shop called Harbor View in San Diego. Can you meet me there at 10 in the morning? Yes, Sarah agreed, curious about what Mark's wife wanted to discuss. The next morning, Sarah left the girls with Patricia and drove to the coffee shop. Jessica was already there, wearing sunglasses and a simple blouse instead of her usual designer clothes. "Thank you for coming," Jessica said as Sarah sat down across from her. "I wanted to talk away from Mark's lawyers and the press." "I'm surprised you want to talk to me at all," Sarah admitted. Jessica removed her sunglasses, revealing tired eyes. "I filed for divorce this morning." Sarah was stunned. "Because of us? I never intended—" "Not because of your visit," Jessica interrupted. "Because of how Mark handled it, how he's handled everything." She paused. "I always knew Mark had flaws, but the way he spoke about your daughters, his own children, showed me who he truly is." "I'm sorry," Sarah said, not knowing what else to say. "I could have forgiven the affair," Jessica continued. "I could even have understood him panicking when you told him you were pregnant. But abandoning his children for 12 years, then trying to buy their silence?" She shook her head. "That I cannot forgive." Jessica took a sip of her coffee. "I never had children. We tried for years, but it wasn't possible for me." "I didn't know," Sarah said softly. "I would have welcomed those girls," Jessica said, surprising Sarah again. "If he had told me the truth 12 years ago, I would have wanted to know them." They talked for almost 2 hours. Jessica asked about the girls' personalities, their interests, their talents. Sarah found herself showing Jessica photos from her phone. The girls at their birthday party at the farmer's market playing soccer. "They're remarkable," Jessica said. "You've done an amazing job raising them." "It hasn't been easy," Sarah admitted. "What will you do now?" "Go back to Ohio?" Sarah nodded. "Our flight is tomorrow. We need to get back to our lives." "What about your bakery? Eleanor mentioned you have a small business." "Yes, a tiny commercial kitchen and a stand at the farmer's market. Nothing fancy." Jessica considered this. "I might have a proposal for you. Would you be open to expanding your business, with proper investment?" Sarah looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Mark is going to pay child support regardless of what his lawyers try to negotiate. But I have my own money, and I've always wanted to invest in women-owned businesses." Jessica pulled out her business card. "Think about it. Call me when you're back in Ohio." When Sarah returned to Patricia's house, the girls were watching TV coverage of their story. "They're calling us the secret quadruplets," Sophie reported. "Your dad's lawyer called again," Patricia told Sarah. "He sounded less demanding this time." The next day, they flew back to Columbus. Frank picked them up at the airport. "Welcome home, celebrities," he joked. "Everyone at the diner is talking about you." Back in their house, Sarah was relieved to find everything normal and unchanged. Eleanor visited immediately, eager to hear every detail of their California trip. "What happens now?" Eleanor asked after Sarah had explained everything. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "Mark's lawyers are still negotiating terms." Over the next few weeks, each girl processed the meeting with their father differently. Emma remained angry, tearing up a newspaper with Mark's photo when the story was published. "He doesn't deserve to know us," she declared. Lily, however, kept her copy of the article, secretly hopeful that Mark might change his mind about them. "Maybe he was just surprised," she suggested. "Maybe he needs time." Sophie approached the situation analytically. Statistically, children do better with 2 parents involved. But the parent has to be a positive influence. Olivia said little but observed everything, processing her feelings privately. One evening, the doorbell rang. A courier delivered a thick envelope from Mark's lawyers. Sarah opened it after the girls went to bed, expecting another restrictive settlement offer. Instead, she found a letter from Mark himself. "Sarah," it began, "I've thought a lot about our daughters since Christmas. My initial reaction was wrong. I'd like to meet them properly, on their terms. No lawyers, no restrictions. I understand if they don't want to see me, but I'm asking for a chance to know them. Please call me directly to discuss." His private number was written at the bottom. The next day, Mark's lawyer presented a new settlement without confidentiality restrictions. It included generous child support, college funds, and an agreement for monthly visits with the girls if they wanted them. Sarah called Jessica to tell her about the change. "He called them our daughters," Sarah said, still surprised. "The public backlash has been severe," Jessica explained. "His company's stock dropped 15%. He's abandoned his political campaign. But I think it might be more than that. The photos of the girls are everywhere. He can't deny they're his." "Do you think he's sincere?" Sarah asked. "I don't know," Jessica admitted, "but people can change when forced to confront their mistakes." That weekend, Sarah sat down with her daughters. "Your father wants to meet you again. Properly this time," she explained. "Monthly visits if you want them. No pressure, no lawyers, just getting to know each other." "Why should we give him a chance?" Emma asked, still hurt and angry. "Because he's part of who you are," Sarah said gently. "And people can change. But it's your decision, each of you." "I want to meet him," Lily said immediately. "I have questions for him," Sophie added. Olivia nodded slowly. "I'll go if everyone else does." Emma crossed her arms. "Fine. But I'm not calling him Dad." Sarah called Mark that night to arrange the first visit. His voice sounded different, humbler, less commanding. "Thank you for giving me this chance," he said. "I know I don't deserve it." 1 month later, Mark flew to Columbus for his first official visit with his daughters. They met at a neutral location, a private room at a restaurant, with Sarah present. The conversation was awkward and formal, with long silences and cautious questions. But it was a start, a beginning of something none of them had imagined possible before their Christmas confrontation. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first tentative step toward understanding. 1 year had passed since the Christmas confrontation at the Williams mansion. The seasons had changed, bringing growth and transformation to everyone involved. On a bright June morning, Sarah stood nervously in front of a small storefront in downtown Columbus. A new sign hung above the door, "4-of-a-kind bakery." Today was the grand opening, and she could hardly believe it was real. Eleanor sat in a chair nearby, watching proudly as Sarah prepared to cut the ribbon stretched across the entrance. The quadruplets, now 13, stood beside their mother, wearing matching aprons with their names embroidered on the pockets. "Ready?" Sarah asked, holding the scissors. "Ready?" the girls chorused. A small crowd had gathered for the opening. Friends, neighbors, regular customers from the farmer's market, and Frank from Millie's diner. As Sarah cut the ribbon, everyone applauded. "I never would have managed this without all of you," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. A black car pulled up to the curb. The door opened and Jessica Williams stepped out. Though divorced from Mark for nearly a year now, she still carried herself with elegant confidence. She approached Sarah with a smile. "I hope I'm not too late," Jessica said, giving Sarah a brief hug. "You made it just in time," Sarah replied, surprised and pleased. Jessica presented Sarah with a large box, a small opening gift. Inside was a professional espresso machine, top of the line and expensive. "The bakery needs proper coffee," Jessica explained. The investment Jessica had offered had made this bakery possible. What began as a business proposal had evolved into a genuine friendship between two women whose lives had intersected in the most unexpected way. "Thank you," Sarah said simply, knowing Jessica understood how much the support meant. Inside the new bakery, customers lined up to try Sarah's famous cookies and cakes. The quadruplets worked behind the counter, each handling different tasks with practiced ease. "Where's Dad?" Lily asked Jessica quietly. "He's flying in tonight," Jessica answered. "He wouldn't miss your recital tomorrow." The monthly visits Mark had begun last year had gradually increased in frequency and significance. What started as awkward meetings at restaurants had evolved into real participation in the girls' lives. The next evening, Mark sat in the Columbus Middle School auditorium, feeling out of place among the other parents. He wore a simple suit instead of his usual designer clothes, trying to blend in. Sarah sat beside him, with Jessica on her other side, an arrangement that still felt strange to all of them. When Lily walked onto the stage with her violin, Mark sat up straighter. She looked so small under the bright lights, but her expression was serious and focused as she prepared to play her solo. "She's been practicing for weeks," Sarah whispered. The first notes filled the auditorium, clear and beautiful. Mark watched in amazement as his daughter played with skill and emotion he hadn't expected. When she finished, he was the first to stand and applaud. "That was incredible," he told Lily afterward, surprised by the pride swelling in his chest. "You have a real gift." Lily beamed at his praise. "You really think so?" "I know so," Mark replied, meaning it completely. 3 days later, Mark stood on the sidelines of a soccer field, cheering as Sophie dribbled the ball past defenders. "Go, Sophie!" he called out, his voice joining other parents. After the game, Sophie approached him, her face flushed with exertion. "Did you see that assist I made in the second half?" "I did," Mark nodded. "You calculated that pass perfectly." Sophie smiled, pleased that he had noticed the strategy behind her play. Later, as they walked to the car, she surprised him with a question about mathematics. "Mom says you're good with numbers too. Can you help me understand this calculus problem?" Mark spent the next hour sitting with Sophie at a coffee shop, working through equations on napkins. He realized she processed information even faster than he did. "You know," he admitted, "I think you're quicker at calculations than I am." The following weekend brought Olivia's science fair. Her project on renewable energy stood among dozens of others in the school gymnasium. Mark listened intently as she explained her work. "This design could reduce energy consumption by 20%, she said, pointing to her model. "But companies like Williams Enterprises still use the old system because it's cheaper initially." Mark raised his eyebrows at her direct challenge. "You're right," he admitted. "We've prioritized short-term profits over long-term sustainability." "Will you change that?" Olivia asked bluntly. "I'm working on it," Mark promised. "Your research will help." The most challenging encounter came at Emma's debate competition. Mark slipped into the back of the auditorium, not telling anyone he was attending. The topic was corporate tax policies, and Emma was arguing against tax breaks for large businesses, exactly the policies that had benefited Williams Enterprises for years. Emma spoke with passion and clarity, directly challenging the idea that wealth would trickle down from corporations to workers. "These tax breaks have only increased inequality," Emma argued confidently. "The data shows the benefits stay at the top while workers continue to struggle." Mark listened with mixed emotions. Her arguments directly opposed his business interests, but her intelligence and conviction were undeniable. When Emma's team won the debate, Mark found himself applauding despite his disagreement. Afterward, he approached her in the hallway. Emma looked shocked to see him. "You came?" she asked suspiciously. "Did Mom tell you I was competing?" "I asked your teacher for the schedule," Mark admitted. "I wanted to surprise you." "Did you hear what I was arguing?" Emma challenged. "I did," Mark nodded. "You made your points very effectively, even though I don't agree with all of them." Emma studied his face. "You're not mad that I basically attacked your business model?" "I'm proud that you think for yourself," Mark said honestly, "even when it's uncomfortable for me." It was the first real smile Emma had ever given him. Meanwhile, Jessica and Sarah continued their unexpected friendship. They met regularly for coffee, discussing the girls' future and increasingly Sarah's growing business. We should establish college funds for each girl, Jessica suggested during one meeting, separate from Mark's support. That's very generous, Sarah said. But why are you doing all this? Jessica was quiet for a moment. Because I wanted children of my own, and because these girls deserve every opportunity. As December approached, Mark called Sarah with a suggestion. I'd like to host the girls for Christmas at my house, he proposed. I could arrange entertainment, gifts, whatever they'd like. I'll ask them what they want, Sarah promised. That evening, she presented Mark's offer to the quadruplets. He wants us to come to California for Christmas, she explained, to his mansion. The girls exchanged looks, having one of their silent conversations that Sarah could never fully interpret. What if we invite him here instead? Emma suggested, surprising everyone. To see how we actually live. Our Christmas, not his, Sophie added. Would that be okay, Mom? Lily asked. Sarah nodded, touched by their decision. I'll tell him. Mark was surprised by the counter-invitation, but accepted immediately. On Christmas Eve, Mark arrived in Columbus with 4 distinct packages, each wrapped differently. The modest house on Maple Street was decorated with homemade ornaments and simple strings of lights, nothing like the elaborate displays at his California mansion. Merry Christmas, Sarah greeted him at the door. Come in from the cold. Inside, the quadruplets waited, each girl clearly herself rather than part of a matching set. Emma with her short, practical haircut, Lily with colorful clips in her longer hair, Sophie with her neat ponytail, Olivia with her tool belt still attached to her jeans. I brought gifts, Mark said, suddenly nervous about his selections. Each present revealed Mark's growing understanding of his daughters. For Emma, books on social justice and leadership. For Lily, professional quality art supplies. For Sophie, advanced science and math materials. For Olivia, a custom-designed engineering kit. How did you know exactly what I wanted? Lily asked, examining her new pastels. I paid attention, Mark said simply. In the kitchen, Sarah was preparing Christmas dinner. Mark hovered awkwardly in the doorway. Can I help? He offered. You can mash the potatoes, Sarah suggested, pointing to a pot. Olivia appeared beside him. Like this, Dad, she demonstrated, showing him how to use the masher properly. The word Dad still sounded new, but no longer forced. The family gathered around Sarah's small dining table, so different from the formal dining room in Mark's mansion. The food was simple but delicious, with Sarah's homemade bread and pies as the highlights. During dessert, Mark looked around at the faces of his daughters and their mother. 1 year ago, he hadn't known these girls existed. Now he couldn't imagine his life without them. I want to thank all of you, he said suddenly, for giving me another chance. I know I don't deserve it. Everyone deserves a second chance, Lily said gently. Even rich guys who mess up badly, Emma added with a slight smile. Mark nodded, accepting her teasing. I spent most of my life thinking success meant having money and power. I was wrong. Real success is having people who love you despite knowing all your faults. We're still working on the love part, Emma said honestly, but we're getting there. As midnight approached, Mark helped clear the dishes while the girls got ready for bed. Sarah joined him in the kitchen. Thank you for including me today, Mark said quietly. This is so different from my usual Christmas parties. Better or worse? Sarah asked. Better, Mark admitted without hesitation. More real. Later, as Mark prepared to leave for his hotel, the quadruplets surprised him with a small gift, a framed photo of the 5 of them taken at Lily's recital. So you don't forget what we look like between visits, Sophie explained. Mark held the frame carefully. I spent 12 years not knowing you existed. I won't waste a single day more. As he drove away from the small house on Maple Street, Mark realized that the quadruplets hadn't just changed his life by appearing at his door one Christmas night. They had changed him. The man who once threw money at problems now understood that some things The most important things couldn't be bought or controlled. The next chapter of their story belonged to all of them to write together. It wouldn't always be easy, but it would be real. And that, Mark was learning, made all the difference. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen